So more info about the American Revolution and Chief Plucky. So Chief Plucky's town is located in Delaware, Ohio, 18 miles above Columbus, Ohio. And Plucky's town was just kind of a motley crew, a smorgasbord of Amerindians. You had Chippewas, Ottawas, Ottawas, Delaware, Mohawks, Shawnee, Wyandottes, and Mingos were all living in Plucky's town. So they lived in longhouses and wigwams. There's more information available on the Delaware County Historical Society historical marker installed at Mingo Park at the east end of Lincoln Avenue. Long before Delaware was platted, Mingo and Shawnee tribes lived in the area, and 2 settlements were established by the Delaware Indians where the future town would develop. The Delaware raised 400 acres of corn within the town limits, demonstrating the value of the cleared land for agricultural purposes. Mingos lived in a small village in the Horseshoe Bottom, which is north of the town of Delaware, and they also grew corn. Delaware, Ohio. So information about the city. Before 1800 in Delaware, Ohio, there were the Hopewell Mound Builders. So the Hopewell Mound Builders was before the Mingos. The Hopewell Mound Builders were there in Delaware, Ohio. Then there's the temporary settlements of the Delaware, Wyandotte, Mingo, Seneca, Amerindian tribes. Even though Delaware was still a small community in 1812 when the capital of Ohio was moved from Chillicothe, Delaware and Columbus were both in the running, and Delaware lost by a single vote to Columbus. Delaware almost became the capital of Ohio. Delaware Amerindian, aka the Lenape, means human beings or real people or original people in the Unami language. Their autonym is also spelled Lenape or Lenape, meaning the people. The term Delaware was introduced by the English, who named the people for their territory by the Delaware River. The river was named in honor of Lord Delaware, the governor of the colony at Jamestown, Virginia at the time. The English colonists used the exonym Delaware for almost all the Lenape people living along this river and its tributaries. So, there's anglicizing all the time. The Lenape people call themselves Lenape, but the colonists, they call them Delaware because they live next to the Delaware River. Chief Plucky was killed in an attack on McClellan Station at Royal Springs, now Georgetown, Kentucky, on December 29, 1776, according to Collins' History of Kentucky, Volume 1, page 178. Plucky was a Mohawk Indian who, with a band of unorganized and undisciplined Mingo followers, had migrated westward. About 1772, settled upon the present site of Delaware, Ohio. Throughout the late 1770s, Plucky's town was used by Plucky and other renegade Mohawk, Shawnee, Delaware, Mingo, Iroquois, Chippewas, Wyandottes, and Ottawas to stage raids against British and American settlements. McClellan Station was located at present-day Georgetown, Kentucky. Georgetown is a 4th-class city in Scott County, Kentucky, in the United States. 2012 population was 30,271 people per the United States Census Bureau. Georgetown is the 9th largest city by population in the U.S. state of Kentucky. Georgetown is the seat of the county of Scott. It was originally called Lebanon when founded by Reverend Elijah Craig, and it was renamed in 1790 in honor of President George Conotokarius, Washington. Georgetown in 1782, the Baptist preacher Elijah Craig led his congregation to the site and established a new settlement which he called Lebanon. This was incorporated by the Virginia legislature in 1784, renamed in 1790 in honor of President George Conotokarius, Washington. When Kentucky became the 15th U.S. state in 1792 and formed Scott County, Georgetown became its seat of government. The name was formally changed to Georgetown in 1846. It is the home of Georgetown College, a private liberal arts college. Georgetown is part of the Lexington-Fayette, Kentucky Metropolitan Statistical Area. The city's growth began in the mid-1980s when Toyota built Toyota Motor Manufacturing, Kentucky, its first wholly owned United States plant in the city. The plant, which currently builds the Camry Hybrid, Venza and Avalon automobiles, and will build the Lexus ES beginning in 2015, opened in 1988. It is the largest building in terms of acres covered under one building in the United States, with over 200 acres occupied. The city previously served as the training camp for the NFL Cincinnati Bengals. After Chief Plucky's Christmas Day raid, after he attacked Fort Herod, later the day, the Mingo War Chief's men killed 2 of George Rogers Clark's men and captured 2 on the Licking River when they were looking for the 500 pounds of gunpowder. Several days later, December 29, 1776, Chief Plucky and his motley crew, 30, 40, 50 warriors, arrived at McClellan Station, a settlement of 30 families located in present-day downtown Georgetown. Now, there's discrepancy with numbers. Plucky might have had 30 to 50 men, and then McClellan Station could have been defended by only 17 settlers or by 30 families. So they arrived at McClellan Station. One report says there's 30 families who was in present-day downtown Georgetown. So the 17 settlers that was included, that have been listed by name, was Robert Todd, Robert Ford, Robert Patterson, Edward Worthington, Charles White, and founder John B. McClellan. Eventually Simon Kenton shows up too. At dawn on December 29, 1776, Chief Plucky, a Mohawk who was the Mingo chief, and his Mingo and Iroquois warriors attacked. So again, it was a dawn attack, just like at Harrodstown. At Harrodstown, it was dawn on Christmas Day, December 29th. They're attacking at dawn. The Chief Plucky's men rushed the blockhouse, firing their rifles as they came in, and through bullet point precision by one of Chief Plucky's men, a bullet buzzed through a tiny niche in the logs and struck John B. McClellan, the founder of McClellan Station, in the head, mortally wounding John McClellan. McClellan would eventually succumb to his wounds 8 days later. Charles White was also killed out of the 17. So Charles White and John McClellan both died in Chief Plucky's raid of McClellan's fort. So out of the 17 white defenders, Charles White's dead, McClellan's dead. Chief Plucky was shot in the chest. So Chief Plucky was rushing into the house, and when he was rushing in, he got shot in the chest. 2 bullets pierced his heart during the initial charge. After several hours of fighting, a number of Amerindian warriors were dead, including Chief Plucky himself, who later was to have been shot by 4 of the whites, so everybody's saying they killed him. Chief Plucky met death at McClellan's fort on a ridge at Royal Springs at today's Georgetown, Kentucky, Scott County, after 2 bullets pierced his breast. Chief Plucky's men, after they saw that their chief had died, they retreated, and they carried their fallen with them. Simon Kenton and some others followed Chief Plucky's men to where Limestone River and the Ohio River intersect, and there the Native Americans crossed the Ohio River into Ohio. Simon Kenton found the boat that was hidden, the 500 pounds of gunpowder, so he was able to see that the Chief Plucky's men did not uncover their hidden 500 pounds of gunpowder. That George Rogers Clark had got from Patrick Henry and the Virginia legislature barely, because they wanted the land of Kentucky. So it all kind of tied in together, right? It all comes right back. That's why we need to learn about Simon Kenton. That's why we learn about all these different people, because of Chief Plucky's raid into Kentucky. Because of Chief Plucky's 1776 Christmas Day raid. Buffalo once forded the Ohio here, beating a broad path into the interior of Kentucky in search of salt licks. For thousands of years, various cultures of indigenous peoples inhabited the area, hunting the buffalo and other game. In the 17th century, the powerful Iroquois Confederacy, based in present-day New York State, drove out other tribes to hold the Ohio Valley as a hunting ground. European American settlers traveling down the Ohio in the 18th century and early 19th century found a natural harbor at Limestone Creek. The Buffalo Trace, also a well-used trail traveled for centuries by Native Americans, was a natural path into the bluegrass region, extending all the way to Lexington, Kentucky. Frontiersman Simon Kenton made the first settlement in the area in 1775, but was forced out by the Western battles of the American Revolution. Returning in 1784, Simon Kenton built a blockhouse at the site of Maysville, and he founded Kenton Station at a site 3 miles, 5 kilometers inland. Simon Kenton met new settlers at Limestone as the land in place was caused and escorted them inland into his station. So Maysville used to be called Limestone. In 1786, the village which grew up near Kenton Station was established by the Act of the Virginia General Assembly as the town of Washington. By this time, John May had acquired the land at Limestone, and Daniel Boone established a trading post and tavern there. In 1787, the little settlement was incorporated as Maysville, though the name Limestone persisted well into the 19th century. Let's see. Washington, so this is another city, right? Georgetown was named after George Washington. Now you have Washington, which is right next to, there's currently Old Washington today, which is right next to Maysville, or is part of Maysville. And so that's another city that was named for George Conotokarius Washington. When he never set a single foot in Kentucky, he sent William Crawford, one of his butchers, to survey land for him in Kentucky. So George Conotokarius Washington never set foot in Kentucky, but he's got 2 cities named after him. Washington's a village near the Ohio River in Mason County in the U.S. state of Kentucky. It's one of the earliest settlements in Kentucky. Also one of the earliest American settlements west of the Appalachian Mountains. Washington is the first city to be named after George Conotokarius Washington. Even though he never set 1 foot in the hills of Kentucky, Conotokarius George Washington played a significant role in the lead up. The city, Washington, played a significant role in the lead up to the Civil War. It produced 2 Civil War generals, one Union and one Confederate, and an escaped slave whose legal case established Canada as a safe haven for escaping slaves. It also provided the site where Harriet Beecher Stowe witnessed a slave auction. And Harriet Beecher Stowe eventually writes Uncle Tom's Cabin, which leads to the Civil War. So that's where some of the horrible, horrendous slave trading was happening at Maysville. Not a big surprise considering it was founded by Simon Kenton, a white psychopath, genocidal, Shawnee baby killing, bloody, massacring, piece of shit. So founded by genociders, and they're still carrying on with these horrible, brutal slave conditions, which led to Harriet Beecher Stowe writing the book in Maysville, or being inspired by the events she saw in Maysville, and Uncle Tom's Cabin was born, and then the Civil War happened. So Washington was annexed by Maysville, Kentucky, and sometimes it's now referred to as Old Washington. So it's part of Maysville now, but it's the Old Washington neighborhood. Old Washington achieved national attention with fucking with genocidal Andrew Jackson in 1830, when on May 27th, 1830, Andrew Jackson vetoed a bill passed by Congress which would have allowed the federal government to purchase stock in the Maysville, Washington, Lexington Turnpike Road Company. This is the so-called Maysville Road veto. This road would have connected Lexington with Washington and the Ohio River at Maysville, would have been part of the National Cumberland Road System. However, President Jackson saw it purely as an interstate road benefiting the state of his rival Henry Clay and vetoed it. So great, the spoil system, patronage, giving jobs to your buddies and your friends and saying fuck everybody else. That's what Andrew Jackson is on. He didn't want to give Kentucky a road because Henry Clay was a Kentucky representative. So it was just some spiteful fucking bullshit. We could have had a road connecting Maysville to Washington and Lexington. So to D.C. We would have had a road going straight to D.C. from Maysville. After Chief Plucky was slain, 24-year-old George Rogers Clark was given control of the entire Kentucky militia on December 31st, 1776, the last day of the year. Chief Plucky, he kills several people, he kidnaps several people, he stops McClellan Station from pursuing. They abandon McClellan Station, and so he stops one settlement, he captures several of them, and then he winds up dying, so he martyrs himself. And in retaliation or response to all this, George Rogers Clark is promoted to, brigadier general, to the number one, man, number one general of the Kentucky militia, and he was only 24 years old. A young Tecumseh, whose name means panther in the sky, was listening to Shawnee chiefs Blackfish and Cornstalk argue. Cornstalk wanted peace, but Blackfish wanted war because of the death of Chief Plucky.